Rolling.
It's January 30th, 2001. We're interviewing John Nelson at Latham headquarters. The interviewer is Michael Akey. John, what were you doing prior to World War II?
Well, I dropped out of high school, and I went to work for Endicott Johnson shoe store. And jobs at that there time, that's the type of job most young people had. And then when the war started, I was too young to get in, so in September of 1942, I decided to try it again, even though I was underage. And there was a sympathetic Marine Corps recruiting officer there, and he did it for me.
Why the Marines?
Well, because of the fact that I had two Marines that used to come in the shoe store while I was working there, and I was very impressed with them, very, very impressed with them. And I asked one of them, what's the chance of getting in the Marines? And he said, well, when you grow up, you can come down and enlist. So short time after that, I asked him again, and he says, well, why don't you come on down and see what we can do? He didn't know that I was very young at the time. So when I went down, like I say, the sergeant in charge down there, he was very, very sympathetic, and he fixed it up for me. He said, now the only problem you're going to have is with your mother and father. And I said, well, yeah, I know that. I haven't told him I was even coming down here. So he says, what do you do? And I said, I work in a shoe store. And he says, well, maybe you could tell your mother and father that you're going in the service in the Marine Corps and you're going to be a shoe fitter in there, which I told him. Yep. And I went home and with the papers, and both of them signed it.
What was your parents' thoughts?
Well, at the time they didn't voice too much opinion on it. He says, well, if that's what you want to do, you can try it. And my father said, because you're so young, if you're going to try it and you don't like it, you can always go and say, well, I shouldn't be here, I'm too young to be here, see.
How old were you?
A little over 17.
A little over 17.
Yeah.
So, and then it was off to boot camp.
Yes, and at that, before that there, the boot camp lasted any place from 5 or 6 months, almost to 9 months. But because of the emergency that we were in, they cut it down to about 8 weeks. And when I was down there, they pushed us through a little bit faster than they should have, and we got out within about 6 weeks. So they shipped me and our whole platoon up to New River, North Carolina, which was a tent city at the time. Just outside of the gates was a little town of Jacksonville, North Carolina. So when I was in there just for a short period of time, they were indoctrinating us into the Fleet Marine Force, and they found out that I wasn't old enough to be there. So instead of putting me out of the Marines, they shipped me up to the Marine barracks at the Naval Air Station in Brooklyn, New York, which was Floyd Bennett Field. And I was up there for a couple of months, and I had a little bit of a, we were all brig wardens. That's what our job was there. We were brig wardens, and also perimeter type of guards. Well, this one night I was on the 8 to 12, and when we got off, the sergeant of the guard had the other relief, and you had to clear your 45, and I did, and I shot right up through the floor into the barracks upstairs. And that there was about 10 minutes after 12 at night. 8 o'clock the next morning, I was at what they call the captain's mast, which is the lowest end of a court-martial. And by 3 o'clock that afternoon, I was on the train going back to New River, North Carolina. So when I got down there, they were just starting to form this one element of the 4th Marine Division, which was regimental weapons outfit, which was a brand new type of a thing. And it was just one company, really, and it was equipped with everything from a 50 caliber machine gun up to a 37 millimeter anti-tank gun and a 75 millimeter half-track, and that's what we were in charge of. And basically is what it was, is that if you were needed by anybody in the regiment for heavier than a 50 caliber or a mortar, they would call on regimental weapons. And that's what we were. We were like a floating type of a, I don't know what you'd call it, troubleshooting type of a thing. If they needed a little more firepower, they would call on regimental weapons, and that's what we were doing.
So this is fairly new.
It was brand new, a new concept at that time, yes. Yep.
So where'd you go next?
Well, I was down there for a few months, and then they decided to transfer our whole division out to Camp Pendleton, California. So the ones with the half tracks, they went by train. Everybody else went by ship. And we went up to Norfolk, Virginia, and got on the USS Monrovia, which was a troop transport. And we went down as far as Guantanamo Bay, and we made a mock assault on the Marine base down there. And then reboarded the ships a couple days later, went through the Panama Canal, and went up right opposite San Clemente Island, and we stormed San Clemente Island. Went across the island, and there were small boats waiting for us there. Higgins boats, that type like this here, and they transported us from there to shore, and we assaulted the shore right at Camp Pendleton again for practice. And we spent a couple of months at Camp Pendleton doing some more training and things like that there, and then it was time for us to go overseas.
So how was it, how were you feeling as a 17-year-old?
Oh, I thought it was a blast. Yeah, I was having a really good time, really good time. Yeah.
You get close with squad members?
Yep. One of the fellas that I was really close with was another fellow from Albany here, whose name was Joe Knapp. And we got very friendly. And another one of the fellows was a fellow by the name of Joel T. Harvey from Brownsville, Maine, who was a Maine fish and game warden up there at the time before he went in the Marine Corps. And we're all basically about the same age. I was the youngest. Everybody else was just about a year older than I was. Yep.
And then what, where next?
Well, we went from Camp Pendleton down to San Diego. And we boarded a ship down in San Diego. And we were the first U.S. outfit that had gone directly from the United States without going to an advanced base and went directly into an invasion, right from the United States. And the invasion was in the Marshall Islands, and our job was in the Kwajalein Atoll. We stormed ashore at Roy and Namur, R-O-I-N-A-M-O-U-R. And the reason for that there was because it was one of the primary air bases that was causing a lot of problems after Tarawa. And that there was where we were. And oddly enough, from the air, the maps that they showed us in the mock-up on the ships, the airfield was shaped like a gigantic 4. And being in the 4th Marine Division, that was pretty interesting.
Do you feel your training was adequate for the actual invasion?
Yep. Not so much at Paris Island. That there was mostly just like an abusive type of thing to get you away from your mother and different things like this here, and let you know that you have to be responsible for yourself. But then after we got to Camp Lejeune, which it is now, but at the time it was just called New River Tent City, there we did some real intensive training, real hard training.
Were the conditions what you expected when you hit the beach?
No. We were in the third wave. And they tell us that the first wave is the easiest wave.
Why is
because
that?
It's a surprise, a complete surprise. But after the first wave, and second and third, and usually it's up to the third wave, then it gets really rough because they've got all their facilities back again, and they got things pretty well under control.
How was it for a 17-year-old to be going into combat?
Didn't mind it too much at all, to tell you the truth, at that there time there. But when we got ashore on Roy Namur, it was just a day and a half battle. But there were several Congressional Medals of Honor was won in that short period of time. Yeah.
And you were in this heavy weapons unit?
Yeah. Mhm. It wasn't called Heavy Weapons. That was a different company. Heavy Weapons, they handled 50 caliber machine guns and different types of mortar. But Regimental Weapons, that was absolutely a different type of unit than any other unit that the Marine Corps at that time had. Yep.
How was the Japanese resistance?
It was pretty heavy, I guess. Not having anything to compare it with at the time, you know. And we did a pretty good job at it, I guess. Yeah. The first night there, it was pretty hairy. Like I say, it only lasted a day and a half.
Well, describe the night.
Well, it was very dark and noisy as anything. And at that time there, this was when the Japanese were still doing a lot of banzai attacks and things like this here. And this is one of the things that they did. But from the experience that some of our NCOs and officers had at Tarawa, they knew exactly what to expect, and they passed the word to us, and we did a pretty good job at it, I think. Yeah, we wasn't overrun or anything like that there.
Now, after you secured the island, what happened?
Well, after we secured the island, most of the 25th Marines went to Hawaii, to the island of Maui, and they had a camp on there, and it's now called Camp Maui, which was the Marine base, and it was on the side of the gigantic volcano there. But our outfit stayed until the 28th of December. This was from the 8th of February, I should say, from the 8th of February until the 28th of February. And we were garrison troops there at the time. And that there was a little bit of excitement on our part, because we didn't know what to expect. And it's always seen, everybody was standing on the, down by the beach, watching the ships leave, and there was only a couple of ships left in the harbor after everybody left.
What did you feel like at that point?
Well, we kind of felt like we're kind of lost, to tell you the truth. But we had a CB outfit with us, a company of CBs, and they provided a lot of good services for us at that time, right there, and we enjoyed it a lot. I remember this one thing, they had unloaded this one LST, and instead of being food and things like that there, it was a whole load of Lucky Lager beer. And I never drank. I wasn't a drinker. I had an experience when I was in Camp Pendleton when one of our officers had a baby, and he passed cigars out, and I smoked a cigar, and somebody told me to inhale it, and that was the end of my smoking. I haven't smoked. I'm 76 now, and that was the only time I ever smoked. They also passed out a half pint of mint-flavored gin. And that was the end of my drinking, and up to this day here, I've never had another drink except an occasional glass of wine at an occasion or something like this here. But I remember everybody seen all this beer, and they wanted to hide it. So they put it under all of the cots. And when you lay down the cot at night, you were laying right on top of the 2 cases of beer that you had underneath the thing there. And they had the blanket that you laid on. There was no blanket on top of you, of course, because of the weather. The blankets went down and hid all the beer, you know, see. And then they also found a couple of pallets filled with peaches, gallon cans of peaches. And the water there was terrible. So everybody was drinking the peach juice, just stabbing it with the bayonet or your K-bar, and started to drink it out of the gallon cans. And I tell you, the latrines were pretty busy after that.
How were your officers?
Very good, very good. Yep. Yep. Have no complaints about him whatsoever, except the one little guy. He was a brand new second lieutenant. And of course, we're being in combat for the first time, and he was a replacement. We were the veterans, and he was a newcomer. And his name was Radzinski, Second Lieutenant Radzinski. And we had a nickname for him, of course, which wasn't Radzinski. It's just, we call him the Rat, you know. And my friend Joe Knapp and I and Joel T. Harvey was going someplace, and we didn't know that he was in back of us, and we started to talk about him. And that didn't go over too well. He reported us to our platoon sergeant, who was a pretty good buddy of ours, and he told the lieutenant, he said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of these guys for you, you know. They won't do that there again." And he just said, "From now on, when you're talking about somebody, and you're three, if one of you walk backwards." It was just a little thing that kind of sticks with you, you know? Yep.
How were replacements generally treated?
Not too bad, not too bad. Not like some of the movies that you see where they were outcast and things like this here. They were accepted pretty well, yeah. Yeah, I was never a replacement, so I can't say what my feelings would have been then, you know. But I don't remember any animosity to anybody or anything like that. Everybody was accepted, yeah.
Now, after garrison duty, where to next?
Went to Hawaii on the Shipley Bay, which was an interesting thing, and went to Camp Maui, and we're there for a few months, and then they told us that we were going to go to another island for an invasion, and they didn't tell us where it was or anything else like this here. And after we were at sea for a few days, then they brought out the mock-ups and things like this, the sand tables, and that's one thing in the Marine Corps. When they start giving the word out, everybody's included into it. It's not a secret type of thing from the officers down to the NCOs and then down to the peons or anything like this. Everybody's included into it. And then they told us it was in the Marianas Islands, and they wasn't too sure at the time it was Saipan or Guam. So as it turned out, it was Saipan. Yeah, yeah. And that was where I got wounded. I got wounded on Saipan, and that was the end of me for the rest of the war.
Tell us about the landing at Saipan. The preparation for the landing. Is there any preparation for the landing?
Yes. Like I said, the sand tables and the maps and different things like this here, and a lot of talking about it from the NCOs to us. And I remember this here one fella here. He was a China Marine. He was in China before World War II, and he was a sergeant, but really he was a PFC. And he had like 18 years in the service. And when you look at his jacket, you can see all different types of stripes onto it that were taken off. And the last one, like everybody else's, wasn't sewn on, it was painted on their fatigues.
Really?
Yeah. And he gave us a lot of good hints, because he was also on Guadalcanal and on Tarawa both. And this is one of the reasons why they took some of these veterans and put it with all the other troops. They always try to intermingle some really, really experienced people in it. And some of the stories that he told us about in China, you wouldn't believe. And I'm not going to go into it at this here time here, but some of it was absolutely fantastic, really. It must have been a good time to be in the Marine Corps. Yep.
What were some of the things that he would tell you in terms of preparing you?
Well, one thing he told us to make sure that we had an extra pair of socks with us, which we knew. And he says that when you tie your shoes, don't lace them all the ways up. Just part way, and then put the laces around the shoes and then tie them in the front. And also,
What was the reason for that?
because we all had leggings on.
You still had the leggings.
Still had the leggings. We're the last ones to, the Marine Corps was the last ones to have them. And one of the reasons for it is that if they were inside of your shoe, they would kind of chafe you. But if you put them on the outside of the shoe, then they didn't chafe. And that was the reason for that there, I imagine. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other practical tips?
Yep, when we're going down the landing nets, he says never keep the strap buttoned underneath your helmet. And he told us of a couple instances, one down in Guantanamo Bay when we were down there, incidentally, which we didn't hear about, was one of the Marines, he had a 50 caliber tripod on his back, and he missed the boat when the landing craft and the troop transport was together, and he made a false step and he went down through, and when he hit the water, he went, because of the thing on his back, he went head first. And the helmet is what brought him right down to the bottom. And when they brought him up, they assumed that if he didn't have the helmet on, or have the helmet buckled, that he probably would have been able to save himself. But with the extra water in it, he couldn't do it, you know. So this is one of the things that they told us to do.
Was it difficult to go from a landing, from a net into a boat?
Very, very difficult. Yeah, very, very difficult.
Why?
Yeah.
Can you explain?
Well, due to the fact that the landing net itself is probably 1.5 inches or 2 inches thick, each one of them. And they wasn't tight. They were very, very loose. So as the ship would roll, you would come and hit the side of the ship. Then when it went out the other way, there would be probably 3 or 4 or 5 feet between you and the side of the ship. And then when you had to step from the landing craft, you had to gauge this here just right, just as both were at the equal part, and you'd step from the net onto the side of the landing craft. But it had to be done fast. And when you got this landing net, there might be 5 or 6 people all at the same position that you are, all trying to get off at the same time. And then if somebody underneath you didn't make it, he would be holding on and you'd be trying not to step on him. And it was kind of difficult, really. It was very difficult.
Now, was Saipan the first operation that you had with the Army?
Yeah, yeah. No, actually, it was the first that the 4th Marine Division had with it, of our outfit. But one of our other elements had some experience with it at the Marshall Islands at Kwajalein. We were at one end of it, and the Army and the Marine Corps was at the other end of it. But on the Saipan was actually the first time that we really had anything to do with the Army. And it turned out it was the New York State Division that was here, which was the 27th, which was a funny thing because both of the commanding officers of the 27th and also the Marine Corps was named Smith, Schmidt R. Smith. And ours was H.M. Smith, which was, they called him Howling Mad Smith. And I guess they had some problems, and he relieved the other general because of the fact that Howling Mad was the supreme commander of the operation.
Now, when you landed on Saipan, were you in the first wave?
I was in the second on that
Second
one.
wave.
Yeah.
What was
second
that
wave.
like? Was that different than?
Yeah, oh yeah, much different, yeah. On Roy Namor, you could stand there and look right across the island. It was very, very small. Some parking lots at some of the malls were bigger than Roy Namor. And there was a causeway between two of these here, and you could actually see right across the entire island, except if you'd come across a bunker or something like this here, and then you couldn't. But that was the highest thing that was on the island. But on Saipan, it was very, very big. It was a big island. Big island.
Was the Japanese reception different?
Much different. Yeah,
How
they
so?
were all dug in, and there was different elevations, where on Roy Namor, everything was just as level as anything. It was only a couple of foot above, at Roy Namor, it was only a couple of feet above sea level there. But on Saipan, there was some cliffs, a lot of villages, a couple of airfields, and that's what was our job, was on the to get the Aslito airfield. Yeah, and that's where we had I don't know if you call it a run-in or whatever it was. We didn't know nothing about it, to tell you the truth, except that we knew that there was a Marine division, the Marines I should say, and then the Army, and then the Marines on the other side. And the Army was like sandwiched in between it. And our job was to go as fast as we possibly could, and then let somebody else do the cleaning up and back, which we did, and the other outfit of the Marines did. But the Army, due to the fact of their training, they wasn't equipped to do like the Marines were trained to do. They were a little more cautious on things, you know. They wanted to, as they advanced, they always wanted to do the cleaning up also, where the Marines, that wasn't their consideration. Their consideration was to try to break right across the island and then let the other elements in back of us do the cleaning up.
What was combat like for you on Saipan?
Well, It was kind of hairy. We had a lot of experiences on Saipan that we didn't have on Roy no more.
Such as?
Well, this one, it was like a little, it wasn't a trench, but it was man-made. And over a period of years, it was like a gully, a gulch. And that was probably, I don't know, a couple 100 feet long and probably about 4 or 5 foot wide. And naturally, you wanted to get under covers, and that's where most of us went. But unbeknownst to us, this was like a little bit of a trap for us, because the Japs knew that this was the ideal spot to go as soon as you got on shore. And when we got there, then they started to drop the mortars from one end right to the other.
So they had it pre-sighted?
Yep. Luckily, my other two friends, Joel T. Harvey and Joe Knapp and myself, we happened to be in the center part of it. So when we seen what was happening on both ends, we just bailed right out of there.
Did you often see the enemy?
Not too often, not too often. Although we did come across, the next day, we did come across 3 of them that was just sitting there reading. Just sitting there reading. We were just going from one area to another. We were looking for our outfit, in fact, because that day we were going to go to the airfield. And the only way that everybody could get there really, really fast was to get aboard our half-tracks or our 2-ton trucks. And we come across these 3 guys eating there. You know.
And what transpired?
Well, after we left there, we went to the trucks, and I was on a half-track actually, and Joe and the other friend of mine, Joel Harvey, they were on a truck. And just as I had got on the half-track got hit with a mortar right inside and blew me out of there. And the next thing I knew, first time I had seen any colored Marines. I'd never seen a colored Marine before this here. They had got me, I was unconscious at the time, they transported me back to the beach, and they were going to put me out on the Solus or the Mercy, I forget which one of the hospital ships it was. And I remember this group of black Marines lifting me over to the side.
What unit were they with?
They were a beach party. That's the only thing at that time I found out since is that the black Marines were doing. They were strictly the landing party. But oddly enough, when you look back onto it, they're the ones that really was having more combat experience than we were, because they were right there in the open most of the time, and they were like stevedores and different things like this here, you know. Yeah, but it was an interesting experience. It was.
How were they received?
I don't know. First time and the last time I ever seen any black Marines, to tell you the truth. But I read a lot about them, and most of them were in aircraft type of units and things like this here, garrison duty and things like this here, until later in the war.
So how was your stay on the hospital ship?
Well, that was interesting. I was there, and I was unconscious and not unconscious. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in the operating room, and I was awake. And the doctor said to me, he says, well, everything's okay. You're not going to lose any legs or any arms or anything else like this here. He said, but I kind of think that your days in the Marine Corps is over. So naturally, they took all the clothes off you. So what they did, they would take the clothes, and then if they didn't cut them off you, it would go down to the laundry, and they'd launder these and then give you clothes back. And I got back a shirt with a platoon sergeant's stripes onto it. So when it came time for going to mess, they would wheel me into the NCO mess instead of.
How'd you like that?
That was pretty good. That was pretty interesting.
You were in no hurry to correct them?
No, no. So I was on there for a while, and then they transferred me in a small boat from the hospital ship to a transport that was going back to Hawaii. And when I got to Hawaii, they put me into an ambulance and took me up a hill. And it turned out that it was Aiea Heights Naval Hospital, and it's overlooking Pearl Harbor. And it's a very, when you look and see the scene from up there, it's a very famous type of scene, because that's where they took a lot of the pictures of the bombing of Pearl Harbor from there. It's Aiea Heights, and it's one of the highest spots in that general area, overlooking Pearl. Yeah. And that was an interesting place. I still had the shirts, you know, and I still was in the NCO things. So I was there for about, I don't know, 10 days. Who comes in but Joe Knapp? He had also got wounded a few days after I did. Yep. And he wasn't too happy there.
Why is that?
Well, he didn't like the idea that most of the mess attendants and everybody else was Japanese Hawaiian. He just didn't like that there too much, you know. And he asked to get transferred out of there, and they transferred him out of there to another. He went to an Army hospital, in fact, instead of a Naval hospital. Yeah. So I was there for a while, and at that time there, Roosevelt and Nimitz and MacArthur had a meeting at the Naval station there at Pearl. And that was the day that they were transporting some ambulatory patients from Aiea Heights down to Pearl to get on a ship to come back to the U.S. And the ship that I was on then was one that I was on before, which was the USS Shipley Bay. And they transported us back to the States. And I wound up in the Oakland Naval Hospital in Oakland, California. I was there for about 3 days, and then they transferred me from there to a little hospital in Pleasanton, California, which is only a few miles away, and it was called the Shoemaker Naval Hospital. And they had probably about 300 patients there, and there was only 3 Marines, and all the rest was Navy. And they treated us pretty well. Yeah. And I enjoyed that there. I was there for about a year. Then I got discharged and came back to this area here. Yeah.
Going back to Saipan, did you personally have any interaction with guys with the Army?
None whatsoever. Didn't see anybody except Marines. Okay. Yeah. And me, I'd seen the Black Marines, and right. That's the only thing that a lot of Navy personnel that was there.
What was the general opinion of Holland Smith?
Actually, there was no opinion on our part whatsoever. He was in a different strata than we were, and we only knew that he was a commanding general, but we didn't have any voice about it whatsoever, no thoughts about it whatsoever, who he was.
When you were on Saipan, was the issue between the Army tactics and the Marine tactics ever discussed?
No.
This was mainly happened afterward?
After it, yep. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of a discussion when I was back in Aiea Heights Naval Hospital. Okay. There was quite a bit there.
What were the opinions?
Well, mostly of it was, oddly enough, was why did they ever mix the Army in with the Marines? The Marines are so much different than the Army was, you know. See, so that was the only thing, you know. But in subsequent years, I've met quite a few people that was in the 27th, in fact, and they says we really got the short end of the stick on that one there, you know. See, they felt that they shouldn't have been there. They should have been at another area where they had complete control over it, instead of having a Marine over the Army, you know. But then I pointed out to this one fellow here that this was a little bit different than like in World War I. In World War I, there was a Marine general that was in charge of an Army division over in France. Okay? But it had nothing to do with this whatsoever. You know, just a conversation, you know.
When you got home, what'd you do?
Well, when I got home, first thing I decided I had to do was get a little more education. So at the time, you could still, under GI Bill, go to school. So the first thing I did, I went and I got a high school equivalency certificate. Then, there were no jobs around, so most everybody went what they call the 52-50 club,
What's that?
or the 52-20 club. You got $20 a week for 52 weeks from unemployment, for nothing, really. And that's why they call it the 52-20 club. But after I was on that there for a while, I decided to go to some kind of a school. So I went to the VA, which was up in the Waterbury Arsenal at the time. They gave me an aptitude test. And they said that I would be suited for a nurseryman, working in a horticulture. And then I found out the reason for this here is everybody that took this aptitude test was all qualified to be nurserymen because they needed people to help on the farms and different things like this here. See? So I was reading the paper one morning and I see this here one ad, and it says, become financially secure. Go to the Austin Beauty School, which I did, oddly enough. I went down, I put an application in, and they were taking anybody because of the fact that it was subsidized by the VA. And I was there for about a month or so, and I figured this isn't really for me. The best thing at the time was that you met a lot of very interesting people at it, you know. Yeah. So I dropped out of that. And then I decided to go back to the shoe store. And I went back, and they welcomed me with open arms because they needed the help. And I was there for about 3 or 4 months. And then I decided to get out of that there. So then my father gave me some money, and I bought a fella out of a pool room down on Madison and Green Street. And just a small place it was. And I ran that there for about a year, and then it just got to the point where I was doing all the work. I was a janitor, the manager, to run for this and everything else, and I decided to get out of that. So luckily I had somebody who was interested in it and took it over from there. Yeah. So then I went to work as a auto mechanic. Yeah. And that was my my background up until I decided to get out of that there and go into a sporting goods store. And that's when I opened up a gun store on Central Avenue. And then when my son graduated from school, he didn't want to go to college, so he went into business with me, and we were in there for quite a few years. Then after that there, we closed that up, went in the book business. We wound up with 4 stores at the Mulberry Troy in Schenectady. And after we were there for a while, we decided to go back into the sporting goods business, which we were in for a few years until the mega stores started to come into the area, and that was the end of us. So we decided to fall back into the book business, because when we closed the bookstores up at that time to go back into the gun store and the sporting goods, we put everything in storage. So when we decided to go back in the book business, we had 3 stores all ready to go, and that's what we did. Yep.
How'd you feel about your Marine Corps experience?
I look back onto it, and I think if I didn't get wounded on Saipan, I probably would have retired from the Marine Corps. I enjoyed it a lot. I can't think of anything bad that, outside of getting hurt in the half-track there. That's the only thing that was bad I can remember. And one thing I do remember real distinct, that there wasn't a lot of cursing in the Marine Corps at the time, like there is today. You know, you look on television, and boy, oh boy, you almost wonder if you got any kids around that's listening to the same thing. But there wasn't a lot of cursing, a little bit, but not an awful lot. Not an awful lot. And that stuck with me too. Yep.
So it was a good experience.
Yep, it was a very good experience. Yep. Yep.
And do you feel you made a contribution?
I do. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Yep.